Where do I begin? He paid the cost for my sin. Baba, he's the good shepherd. Everywhere I go, he knows. Baba, he is my savior. I will follow where he goes. I was so scared storms would frighten me. I will not fear, he's with me. Baba, he's the good shepherd. Everywhere I go, he goes. Baba, he is my savior. I will follow where he goes. One more time. I will follow where he goes. Oh, once more. I will follow where he goes. Amen.
That's right. Let's do that. We're going to move right along pretty quickly tonight because they have a pretty full program planned, but just a couple announcements to remind you of right after the service tonight. There is a cookout. It's just the other end of the building in the pavilion, and if you prefer to stay in the activity building to eat, you can do that as well. If you didn't bring any food, you could still come and eat. We are one of these churches that forgives, and when you don't bring anything, you're still invited and you're still welcome to eat. Remember, Tuesday of this week in the morning, Ladies Missionary Fellowship, 9:30. Deacon Trustee meeting, 7 Tuesday evening. And if we can have some ushers, we will receive an offering. And we got 2. We have 2 more, so we're going to make it. Harold, would you lead us in prayer?
Dear gracious Lord and precious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this great opportunity. We come out to thy house and learn about this mission trip that in St. Vincent, Lord. We ask, Lord, you just be with the ones that are giving the program out tonight, Lord, that you just bless our lives and that we might gain insight into the ministry that they had there. Give you the praise for the offering that's being given, Lord. We ask that you just bless these tithes and offerings for your honor and your glory. We'll give you the praise and gracious name. Amen.
Amen. Well, good evening. I get to start us off tonight and just kind of talk a little bit about where we went and the purpose of our trip. And so, as you've heard many times, we went to an island called St. Vincent's, and they call it St. Vincent's of the Grenadines. And so the Grenadines is a collection of islands. It's like 32 little islands, of which St. Vincent's is the biggest and the capital. And we threw up Ohio there over it, and that little white spot you see in the middle is St. Vincent's. And so St. Vincent's is 150 square miles, and about 110,000 people live there. Just by way of comparison, Guernsey County is a little over 500 square miles. So we could take all of St. Vincent and fit it inside of Guernsey County a handful of times, although Guernsey County only has about 40,000 people that live here. Rolling Hills School District is close. Rolling Hills School District, our school district here, is about the same size as St. Vincent's, just to give you a bit of a feel for it. So we went there, and their history there is a lot of Anglican churches, Catholic and Methodist churches, but mostly in name only. People that are born and baptized into those church names, and that's on your birth certificate, and some religious knowledge, kind of some church knowledge, but not a lot of personal relationship with the Lord. And so our purpose was to go and to help a church plant there. There's a Maranatha Baptist Church, and they planted a church north of Georgetown. Steve will tell you about kind of where it's at. And it's just a small little one-room church, and we were there to help them put on their vacation Bible school. But more importantly than that, the big idea was to help them, how do you do a vacation Bible school? Because they're used to missionaries coming in and kind of spending a lot of money and kind of doing a splashy vacation Bible school, and it leaves them with this impression of, gosh, we could never do that, and we would never have the money to do that. And so our real mission was to teach them how to plan a VBS, how to put it on themselves, and then just kind of coach them through it as we do it. Our idea we had was it's going to be 3 days, so our idea was, hey, day one, you watch us do it, and then day two, you help us do it, and then day three, you'll do it, and we'll help you. That was our thought anyway. And then also while we was there, we had, there was going to be kind of some open air meetings, kind of like some revival type services that we were going to preach. And also we just kind of wanted to take them and bring them some materials and books and just kind of good stuff that we thought would help them, you know, as a church, share the gospel, be biblical, and kind of bring some of what we appreciate about Calvary to there. Just so you can see, just to kind of give you a feeling for where it's at, because everybody asks me where it's at, and I'm terrible at geography. But, you know, basically you kind of go off of our east coast a little bit and go down until you hit Nicaragua, and then back up a little bit, and then there's St. Vincent's. So that's where I'll stop, and I'll let the rest of the team kick in there.
Okay, this is a picture of the house where we stayed. We had the whole upstairs of this home, and it was basically 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a big kitchen, and then kind of a family room / living room area, which turned into the dining room. We found out it was a lot hotter in the kitchen to eat there. So, there's the kitchen. And Eric heroically trying to turn off the kitchen sink. The water turned on very easily, but you had to really put a grip on it to get the water to turn off. We found out the last day that you could reach underneath and there was a valve, just a little turn valve you could turn it off with. But hey, anyway, and so there was a huge balcony that ran around the whole front of the house, and that was the best place for a breeze, so we spent quite a bit of time out there. We also had the every house typically has dogs in the yard, and our host told us that was for security reasons, because the dogs, not necessarily because they'll attack anybody that comes in, but they'll bark for sure. And you can imagine if every house has dogs like that, basically running free outside, there was often dogs barking. All night, all day, along with the roosters. There's our pet. Eric might have fed the dog a couple times, and so she stuck pretty close after that. The restrooms, there was running water, and the water in St. Vincent is actually very good drinking water because it comes from mountain springs. But there was no hot water in the house, as far as no hot water tank. So it was cold showers all week, but by midweek, the cold showers felt good. Actually, before midweek. The second picture to the right is just a view from the porch. Okay, the church building is in just a small village just north of Georgetown, where our house was. All these communities are on the east coast of St. Vincent. So if you go east, it's just open Atlantic Ocean from there. So there was a breeze most of the time, but you could always hear the ocean from just about anywhere. I mean, you could hear the ocean from our house, actually, at night, which was kind of nice. But the church building, I think, I'm going to guess it was probably about maybe 15 feet wide by 25 feet long. So a small building. And unusual because it was wooden frame building. Typically all the homes and buildings are made out of cinder block, made from volcanic stone. And they do not allow, the government does not allow the harvesting of wood, of trees in St. Vincent, because they're really big into conservation. So any wood that you have has to be imported, so it's very expensive. We're not sure the story behind why this ended up being a wood frame building, but I'm guessing that somebody, probably a church in the States, maybe donated the lumber and shipped it there. And that window was a very popular window for kids to peer in, and it was also the window. On the back side of the building, there were restrooms with regular plumbing. It wasn't an outdoor facility, but you had to go to the window to get toilet paper. So oftentimes during the service, somebody would come to the window, and somebody would just hand the toilet paper out the window. I hope I didn't steal somebody's story. Okay. So that's inside of the building. Okay, let's talk about people. This is our group. This was right before we left the church. And pastor joined in there and led us in prayer before we left. And then here's a picture during the trip. The group. Okay, now, this picture shows Eric and I. It's kind of obvious which ones we are. That being said, our missionary host is the man in the center. That's Aaron. His last name is Sutherland. And Aaron, just a story about Aaron. He was very proud of his mission team from the States. And another pastor, another missionary pastor from the area was talking to him, and Aaron shared this with us, and was talking to him and saying, and they discovered that they both were going to have groups there from the States. And so the other pastor invited Aaron, you ought to bring them over and we'll do something together. It's two groups together. Aaron said, that's okay, I have my own white people. So anyway, and to Aaron's left is Pastor Presley Daniels. The church where we ministered to is actually a church plant off of Maranatha Baptist, and it's a little bit bigger town north of where the church plant was. Anyway, that's so he participated in a lot of the activities, helped out with the Bible school a little bit, played accordion for the evening services, and then next to him is a deacon and lay pastor for the church plant, And his name is Bradley Bullock. Okay. And he works full-time, and then he's now acting pastor because Aaron has moved on. Aaron, his title is, he's basically a missionary church planner, and he's moved on to Trinidad to plant a church there. And this is Brother Daniel's family, or Brother Bullock's family. And just some other pictures of the team with working together. Okay. Now, this is our driver, Grafton. Grafton is, just a word about Grafton. He's currently kind of a youth leader for Berean Baptist Church there in Georgetown. And they actually allowed us to use their van for the week. So he drove us all over the place. And he's also studying to be a youth pastor. So, but right now he's the youth group leader. But quite a character, and just a fun guy to be around. Okay.
My turn. Okay, so the second part is about our time and our travels. I don't know. Most of our travels went uneventful. We had to leave Tuesday night because our flight was supposed to take off at 6:30 in the morning from Pittsburgh. So we all left Tuesday night to Pittsburgh, and we spent the night there, and we got shuttle bus to the airport at 4 a.m., so we were all like dragging. But the funny part about that is at 4 a.m. we had to load the 6 of us plus 13 plus luggage. Not only just our luggage, but we had our backpacks, our purses, little carry-ons. So we probably had between 13 to 20 pieces of luggage just from the 6 of us. So it was it was interesting, a small little van. And plus there were, 2 other people with us, I think. Yeah, there were 2 other people with us. So it was not crowded for the people, but it was crowded for the luggage. So we got on our flight at 6:30, and we ended up in Fort Lauderdale. Well, once we got at Fort Lauderdale, we had like a 4.5, 5 hour layover. So, we toured the airport. It's not as big as what you would think it would be, once you see it in 4 hours. And then we loaded our plane again and went to Barbados, and there we got on a little plane that held about 40 people, I like to call them puddle jumpers, and we landed in St. Vincent at about 8:30 that night. So it was a long day. We were exhausted. But once we got to the airport, like Steve said, Aaron picked us up, and we again loaded a van, 6 of us, 20 pieces of luggage. But not only us, we also had Grafton the driver, we had Aaron, and we had Aaron's mom who came to meet us also, Denise. And so we were all like crowded in this tiny little van. That's actually Eric in the airport. I think that was on your way home, wasn't it? We kept texting you back and forth, where are you? Yeah, because he had an even worse layover because you missed your flight or something on the way back.
It was like a 15-hour layover.
Yeah, so he was stranded. We were a little worried about him, but Kelly saved him, so it all worked out.
The most boring airport on earth.
So, and again, there's our airplanes. Once we got to St. Vincent, we did load our van again. And again, it was very crowded, and 3 of us out of the group get car sick. Well, we were all in the back. And you think the roads here are curvy? No. Every single road that we went on was, curvy, up and down. There weren't many hills, but it was very, very curvy. And Dan was pretty much hanging her head out the window because she was turning green. And it was about a 30 to 45 minute drive from the airport to our house. So by the time we got there, we're all going, oh. So that was a little bit trying. And I probably shouldn't tell this, but that's the night that Eric also fell in a hole that we all forgot about. He went to go shake hands with another pastor, and there was like a hole outside where the sidewalk is, and he didn't see it, and he stepped forward and landed right. It was, probably about that deep. It was a pretty good size hole.
But pro tip, firm handshake saved my life.
See? So men, get your firm handshake on. As we were going through the airport, every time we went through customs, Jan wanted them to open the suitcase with the puppets in it just to get a reaction from the people at customs, but they never did. And Jan's going, seriously? Just open that one? Because they were all in there like, help me, help me. So Jan, it was funny because when we opened it, they're all like, seriously, if you didn't know they were puppets, you would think that they were really scared to death when we opened the suitcase. So it was kind of funny. Then we got there and we got to our house and we unloaded. There's one of our, I guess, lounge areas. That's where a lot of us fell asleep on the couch or in the chair or at the table or wherever we were. So all week we were able to use, like Steve said, we were able to use the church van of a neighboring church, and that's where Grafton drove us around. But one thing about their culture is that you either walked everywhere you went or you hailed a cab, or which was very expensive, or you caught a ride with a van, on a van. So every time we would go someplace, we would have people, we would just stop along the road and they would pick up people that they know and take them to their destination. So our van could have just the 6 of us, or we had up to 18 or 21 at one point in time, all crammed up in a small little van about that size. So it was interesting because we got to meet a lot of people in that aspect, but it was also very crowded. But we kept saying we can do anything for the Lord for 7 days. So it worked out really well. But the church that we worked with, they also had a church van that they were borrowing from another church. And it was more like a bus. Oh yeah, there we are on the bus, on the van. All of us were sitting pretty much really close to each other. But Steve flipped right through that one because he didn't like himself in that picture. So there it is. Oh no, that's not the one. You didn't put it in. That's later. Oh, okay. So that's Aaron, and that's us on the van acting kind of crazy. So the next one is actually the church bus. When it wasn't running, there was only maybe like 20 or 25 people that came to church. But on Sunday evening it ran, and I mean, no joking at all, there was probably about 50 or 60 people, adults and kids, get off that bus. They kept coming, and we kept going, where are they putting them? I mean, I don't know if they were laying under the seats. We have no idea. I mean, and they ranged from adults, men, women, to children. And they just kept piling off the bus, and we ended up with like 50 or 60 people that evening. And where'd they come from? So that was our target. Yeah, there's some of them coming off the bus now. And they ranged from probably 2-year-olds up to, adults again. We won't say ages. Once we got there, the next picture I see is going to be, we had to put up a tarp. And that was where, Debbie will talk more about this, but there wasn't a lot of room because where you're looking is pretty much what we had. There's a road and that's pretty much all we had to work with right there. And where the van is, that's about as far back as we could go because then there was a drop off to the ocean or a road that went on around. So we all had to put up a tarp. This is us taking it down. And again, hanging out. Our typical day basically was we would get up. We were always woken up by dogs, roosters, or goats. And Jan and I shared a room on the back of the house, and there was a laughing goat. I mean, every time it sounded like it was laughing. And Jan and I would look at each other and said, there's our wake-up call, there's our laughing goat. Everybody else got dogs and roosters. We got laughing goats. And the place that we stayed did have all kinds of animals around, so it was constantly, roosters just don't crow in the morning. They crow all night long. Took us a while to get used to that. But every morning we pretty much got woken up by roosters, goats, or dogs. The first day we were there, Aaron came and picked us up in the van, and we went into Kingstown, right? Kingstown, and we went to the grocery store. Now, grocery store there is nothing like we are used to here. You know, we can drive down the street and go to Walmart. Their big grocery store on the island is about the size of our Dollar General. So, you know, maybe even a little bit smaller. But it had really good fresh fruit. Like the pineapple was great, the papayas and I don't even remember what we got. They were all really, really good. So, but it was very, very tiny. But we were able to get what we needed for the week. One thing that we got was a big bag of rice. We used that rice all week, and we still sent the unused to Aaron because, I mean, we had a lot of rice left over, and it expanded. Like, kept growing and growing and growing. By the end of the week, we ended up throwing a lot of our rice away. And then Aaron also took us to a local eatery for lunch, and we had saltfish and plantains. I can't remember what else, but it was really good. You could either get fish or chicken. I think half of us got fish, half got chicken. So it was good. Then we went back to the house, and we got ready to prepare for our session. And then the next day, we walked to Georgetown to Aaron's house, which was maybe about 3 or 4 blocks down from where we stayed. There's our goats and chickens and goats all over the road and chickens everywhere. We went down to Aaron's house, and that's where we went to the beach with all the lava rocks and all of that fun stuff. And then the next week was our VBS week. And during that week, we got up, we went to the church, we prepared, we hung things up on the walls, we made sure everything was prepared for our crafts, for our games, for everything that we were doing that week. And then we had VBS, which we're going to talk about more. And then we would go back to the house, and that was basically when we would go and we would debrief about the VBS. We would take another shower. We would just sit around. We would take a nap. We would prepare for the following day. We ate, just odd and end things. And then we would get ready to go to our open sessions that we had that evening where Eric preached. And then once that was finished, we would go home, and it was probably about 9 o'clock, we would eat, because we didn't have time to eat in between, because really we weren't that hungry because we ate lunch and everything was crazy. So we would come back and we would eat late at night. We would go to bed, do the same thing the next morning. So it was the second week, other than the stuff that we did at VBS, it was all pretty much the same routine. So I think that's it.
Okay, so they wanted me to talk about some of the trials and testings. One of the big things probably was the heat, and it didn't matter if you were a guy or a girl. We all had swollen ankles and feet, and I don't know what it was. In Jamaica, we had the same thing. It was like you just, I don't know, you expanded. You look like Michelin Man on your legs. And bugs, like, we would, it was so hot that you would shower 2 and 3 times a day, and you would, like I brought 2 things just of pumps for mosquito repellent, and you're just constantly, you're smelling like that eucalyptus stuff, you know, and spraying that on you just to keep the bugs off you, and then no see-ums, you don't see them, there's something there that bites you. And so especially Debbie and Eric had just plasters of bites up and down their legs. So that was, unfortunately, I brought Benadryl, no itch stuff. That was great, and passed that around. One other thing, well, several other things, not just all of the goats and all of that, but we had cockroaches, and they were probably between 2 and 4 inches long. And so at any given moment, one of us girls would be screaming, and one of the guys would run in to kill a cockroach. And we had bats. One night I was on the phone with Dennis, and all of a sudden this bat just came swooping down in, and I'm screaming in his ear. And if it had 9 lives, Steve killed all 9 of them because he was just wailing on that thing. And then one morning I'm in the shower, and a bat just comes out of nowhere, and I'm all soapy, and I can't run anywhere, and I am screaming. And they all thought I was screaming because the water was cold. And I'm like, I didn't tell them till later, no, I had a bat in there. And so I closed my eyes, and I just was trying to rinse, and I'm like, Lord, please take care of that bat. Don't let it touch me. I mean, I was just like freaking out, you know, inside my head. And God took care of that bat, because as you can see there, I think somehow, I'd like to say my guardian angel must have swatted that thing down and put him in that corner, because I was always concerned there was just a hole in the ground. And I was always personally watching that hole for a snake to come through. Well, there was never a snake that came through, but the bat, you know, but that hole didn't drain right. And so you would end up with this water, and that bat drowned in the water. Yes, God was good. I'm just saying. I probably did scare it to death. So, yeah, we had the bugs, and then we had to heat our water. So, which, you know, for dishes and that type of thing. And if you're a coffee lover like Debbie and I, We had to heat our water for coffee, and I did bring filters, and she and I both, we were concerned we would run out because we're such drinkers there, brought coffee with us, and we would just pour the hot water over there and let it drip. That's how desperate we were. And so, you know, we were making our coffee that way. We could not do laundry. We were supposed to be able to do it at Aaron's house, but because Aaron's mom got ill, and we'll talk more about that later, but we ended up hand washing our clothing, and fortunately the boxes thought to bring clothesline and pins, and so we call it our Caribbean clothes dryer. We just wrapped that thing, the clothesline, all around all the pillars on that upstairs thing, and we all got to know each other's underwear and everything. So there it is. I just want to throw this in. I could not be feeling so any more blessed than I am in that. With all that we dealt with, and even the unsurety of our times being changed and everything, we had to be very flexible. This team here, nobody complained. And when we left that house, we had on the cheery spirit and the smiling face. And I really feel God used us to be a testimony to them. And because we all knew we were there for the Lord, and nobody complained. And I just so appreciated that with them, to have that sweet spirit about them with that. And I really feel that was such a good testimony. One good, I need to switch back to the animals. One good thing, we had lizards, and they were all over like the walls. Like even in the church, there would be lizards up and down the walls. And in our home, it was the same way. But they were a good thing because they would eat the bugs. Like Diane and Steve, they had their own personal lizard in their bedroom. And they took a video. I don't know if you have it tonight, do you? No, they didn't put it in. But they got it. They videoed it, and it was eating moths and bugs off of that were coming in the window, because we didn't have screens, you know. And so the lizards were good. They were good things.
Speaking of bugs, somebody videotaped this episode.
Debbie did.
Debbie, okay.
Video. This is one night.
Let's push it over onto the fire there and burn it.
Oh, yeah, right up.
Under the cutting board?
Yeah. I think it's the back of the sunlight.
Wait a minute.
What? No, we didn't have that.
Where's the paper towels at?
What is it? We used them all.
All right, stop saying. Make quiet. It's kind of
Lift the board up. We need the water. We're still washing. I'm just not finishing until after that thing is gone.
When did you notice? Did you see something?
I know what you mean. Yeah, it went underneath the pool. So what do you lift it? What do you do?
How were you use that spoon, Dan?
Don?
Yeah.
What was it?
Something.
I don't want to say the cockroach.
Just a small one. Two cockroaches now.
And that was a nightly occurrence. I mean, we had cockroaches in our bedroom, in the kitchen, everywhere.
Okay, we're going to talk about the music. And, it was really a fun thing to do. It's always fun to do music anywhere, but it's fun to go to a different church, and then especially fun to be at a different country to see how they worship. And we didn't have the language barriers that we've had in other trips, but sometimes we couldn't understand them because, like, we would say Georgetown, they say Georgetown, they don't say their R's. And and there were some dialect things that we didn't understand. They'd say, you're going to come by me tonight, which means you're going to come over to our house tonight or something. So anyways, when we first got there and we had the training sessions, we wanted to teach them the songs for Bible school like Sarah did with our VBS this year, and the workers would learn them. So in order to put the words up, they just had studs on their walls. So the Sturkin said we could just take push pins and put them up. Well, to get posters down there, like that was probably one of the things, just in general, how we were going to get, we had ideas for things, but how we were going to get it there. Well, Steve found some kind of program, and he printed them off ahead of time on just regular size paper, and then he taped them together so when we got to the church, they could be put up. So we would put them up a day or two at a time and teach everybody. And each of the songs that we did for VBS went with whatever the theme was for the day. Just for example, the Good Shepherd song we already did. We did motions, but we didn't do quite as many motions as we do in our VBS because we didn't have that much time to be with them. It's not like they can watch a video. They might be able to do something like that at home, but they don't have a projector that they could show anything like that. So it worked out really well. I think we have a video, a short video of how we were learning it, the process of it. So that was an evening service. This is their members. And then Steve got to play along with them. He got to come in. Session of the choruses. In the evening services, we had these girls would find us and they would sing with us each night. So we were able to learn a lot from them, some of these choruses that we want to sing here sometime. And you'll be able to hear, if you listen, that accordion is off to the side. Pastor Presley's playing that. Posters up for them. There's the accordion. And then we did special music. Steve and I did a duet, and then we had a quartet and these were at the evening services. I don't think that was in the morning. one of the sessions where I was teaching them what we were going to do for VBS.
So this was before VBS started in the morning. Practicing, there were already several kids there.
And this was at VBS, and we had to wear skirts or dresses. And this is as kids are coming in. They weren't all there yet. And when they get to the chorus, I want you to just notice, especially little Ayana, what she does. They get such joy, and she does a little spin, too. Here they go. There she is. She's going to spin in a minute.
Love of Jesus down in
This is when it rained.
down in my heart. Down in my heart, I got the love of Jesus.
They're pushing the water off.
Jesus down in my heart.
Debbie's doing her VBS. I mean, her crafts, her crafts. This is when Steve has appeared. I was so glad with the guitar.
Yes, Jesus loves me. Can't hear it if you put your hand on it. The Bible tells me so. Just sing, please.
One thing that I thought was interesting is if you're a pastor there, you usually, I don't know if they put that expectation on themselves, but they take it upon themselves to learn a musical instrument because they are the ones who are the leaders as far as the music goes. So that's why Brother Presley learned to play the accordion, and then Brother Bradley wants to learn to play the keyboard. And that's why Aaron learned to play the guitar, so they know that they had accompanied music.
Yeah, Aaron knew some guitar, several guitar chords already, but he just wasn't sure how to apply them in lots of cases. But I had an opportunity to work with him a few times. This is just before an evening service, one of the evening services on the front porch of the church. And so our hope is that we can get him. His guitar is kind of beat up and old, and it's on its last legs, and so we're going to try to get him a new guitar and get it to him in the next few months.
My role was kind of makeshift Bible teacher, was what I did all week. And, I know none of the other ones will brag on themselves, but this group of people is just so flexible on what they had to do. And you saw, like, Debbie making crafts out of a suitcase and on a piece of porch about this big. And I hearkened back to 5th grade music class when I saw Diane lead kids in music. And, Marcia's having kids play games out in the street because that's the area you have to work with. So it's just neat to see how God used everybody and did things. And so I taught a couple. The whole idea was we was going to teach like a couple like sessions, right, to get ready for VBS. And so one of them was how to lead a child to Christ. And I don't know if you remember when we did it here, but one of the times when Pastors was away in one of the services, we did how to share the gospel with like a bridge illustration, and I forced you guys to like sketch it all out 5 or 6 times, and so we did that there, and they really appreciated it. It's funny. There's so many things in our culture, and probably you guys have seen some kind of illustration like that a zillion times, and but I just think it was really helpful. So I just thought, well, man, I'm going to teach them that, and even the missionary came up to me afterwards and said, man, I've been to seminary and everything. He said, I've never seen that. That is really helpful. I'm going to use that all the time. And I just couldn't believe it. He'd never seen it. But there's just so many things you take for granted, And so they really seemed to appreciate that. And we did another session on how to teach the Bible, which was a lot of the material when we did one of our Pillars conferences here a few years ago. And, one of the pillars of, Calvary Baptist is we want to proclaim God's word faithfully. And so I took a lot of the materials from that and tried to jam it into like 45 minutes you know, how to teach the Bible. And so we did that. One of the things was on the session Friday night, Aaron is given like his announcement, like, hey, everyone, come back Sunday. And, you know, and then next week is going to be our VBS. But make sure you're here on Sunday because, you know, Eric is going to preach adult Sunday school class and Sunday morning and Sunday evening. And the rest of the team, they're going to do all the Sunday school classes and teach your kids and stuff in the morning, which was great, except for that was the first time we'd heard of any of that. So then we were like, okay, great, let's come up with Sunday school lessons and sermons between now and Sunday. So we did that, and then Sunday, Jan and they took all the kids outside and was teaching, you know, leading them in songs and doing lessons. And I taught all out of Acts that morning. I taught out of Acts 8, Acts 9, Acts 12. Where it was, you know, kind of what the message that accompanies salvation and seeing Paul's radical transformation and even seeing just the sovereignty of God in missions. And so my role there was to really try to preach like I'm preached to here, like Pastor preaches, where we just expositionally go through a passage verse by verse. And so I wanted to do that there so they'd get a real appreciation for just the Word of God. And then I also did some teaching of Jan taught all the kids, and then I taught the teens during the day, and then the last day when I was gone, she taught the teens. And so it's refreshing to know that teens are the same everywhere. And you get all the same eye rolls, and you know, so that was good. And then one of Steve showed a picture of it, but Steve and I did tent setup too, and they told us in advance, like, hey, we're going to set up a tent for you guys. And when you hear the word tent, I'll bet an image of something comes in your mind, of something that probably looks like a tent. And then when they brought the tent to us, it was really just a huge tarp. And they just rolled it out, and me and Steve were climbing down over the hills, and we're like cutting down branches to try to poke it up with stuff. And we found a board laying around that we was propping up the middle with, and the pastor hops up on the roof of the church, and he's nailing it down to the roof. And he was like, what, now hold on to that board because somebody will steal it. Because they said they don't have any lumber there, right? They have to import it, and lumber's valuable. So he's like, make sure you nail down that board, or somebody will steal it. So that was our role for the week.
I was in charge of helping to teach them how to plan a Bible school, and when we went in to this, we went in with lofty goals. If you look at who's up here, you have 5 teachers, and you have Eric, who's not a teacher but is a teacher at heart. And we thought in 3 handy-dandy sessions that we were going to have them trained and ready to go, and that day 1 would be I do, day 2 we do, day 3 you do, and by golly, we'd have it ready to go. And as Jan said, we had to be flexible because it just didn't happen. One of the things we were told when we were planning that we would have 3 2-hour sessions. It ended up, it was 2 hour and a 4 sessions, and then the 3rd session was a half an hour after church getting ready for Bible school that started the next day. So truthfully, we had 2 sessions with them rather than having 3 2-hour sessions. One thing that we did that I think was beneficial to them is the first night we asked them, out of the 3 sessions that we have with you, what do you want out of this? And, you know, how can we meet your needs? And one of the things that they said was that groups that come from the States bring these real expensive programs in that they can't afford. And they wanted to know how to plan a Bible school, just to plan it without buying a curriculum, and how to do the crafts and things and to do it cheap. So we were glad because when we planned their Bible school, we didn't use like what we have here with Game On and Star Galactic Galaxy and all that. We actually developed a template with all of us having input where we picked Bible verses, a Bible story, music, crafts, and we did it so that they could plan day by day. And we modeled it because that's how we developed their 3 days of Bible school. And we developed it with the topic that Jesus is the way. And if you look at 1 John, there's like 6 or 7 things that they say that Jesus is, and we only covered 3 of them, thinking that they could then go from there and work on with it. As far as covering things that were cheap, I went back the second night, and as Marcia had said, there were volcanoes there, and there were lots of volcanic rocks. So I picked up a big rock, and I wrote a Bible verse on it. And I told them, hey, you know, with your teens, they could pick a favorite Bible verse or the Bible verse for the day, and they could actually, you know, have that and have it as a paperweight or have it something that they could take back. So, you know, I don't think we got them totally ready for where they need to be, but knowing the time element and things, we gave it our best shot.
As you know, I did puppets and taught Bible, and one blessing was Mark and Becky Sturkin sent us a huge box of puppets to give to them. So we put them in suitcases and we took them down, and so you could see in the corner of that shot is a sheet. We all took sheets with us, and we pinned it to the corners, and that was our puppet station. And but you get behind there, and Hokey Sam, you'd be there trying to hold that thing up, and literally water just would drip down you while you are, because you're swagging to death. And I had 3 little girls that wanted to start doing the puppets. So I worked with them, and they were so good, and they were excited about it. And I'm praying that maybe they take that over. One thing, we had to do door-to-door publicity, and it was kind of funny. Like, some went with Aaron and Debbie, and Eric and I went together with some little girl that hardly talked to us. She was probably 8, maybe. And she took us around the neighborhood, and I'll come back to that guy in a minute. But we went door-to-door, knocking door-to-door, and you couldn't just, you had to ask for permission to go into their yard because they all have animals and dogs, and they don't want, you have to just say, hey, can we come, you know, and they would let you, they all let you. And very, very poor. These pictures look so pretty, and we were talking before, it's just very poor. It doesn't give you a really true image because they use bright colors on their stuff. It looks pretty, but it's so not. But anyway, so Eric and I and Debbie, first we get down this road, and there was like a group of people down at the end of this road, and I'm like, oh, I just thought they were at somebody's house talking and standing out there. So I'm like, oh, let's go down there. So we go, and as we go, there's like people walking away, like they don't want to talk with us. And I'm like, they're walking away, you know? But there were 2 guys that stood there. Well, and so I'm like, hey, we're here, you know, we're going to have a vacation Bible school, and we're going to have special meetings, and we'd love to have you come, never realizing it was the bar. So it was a bar, and we come away, and then I could see in through the door, and I'm like, Eric, that was a bar. And he goes, well, I thought you knew that. And I'm like, no, I didn't know it was a bar. So we invited the people in the bar. So then we go down this road, and there's another house, and this lady, we yelled out to her to see if she would come, and she asked a question, and both Eric and I are like, what? And she asked it again, and I could have sworn that she said, are you going to have weed there? And I said, no, we don't have weed. And she said, are you going to have blah, blah? And I said, no, and he's like, we're looking at each other like, are you kidding? Yeah, no weed. We're going to sing and we're going to play games. No weed. And she's like, no, 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 you're going to feed them. It's like, oh, okay. Well, we're glad you weren't asking about the marijuana because we weren't going to have any. So it was just stupid stuff like that that would happen. So anyway, that was our weed and feed story. Back to the guy, he was in the one picture right there. He came to us the one night, and he has cerebral palsy. And I didn't realize it. He sat next to me, or maybe I sat next to him, and you know how I am. I'm just like, well, I'm out there. And so, you know, I'm asking him, oh, are you into soccer? Because, you know, that's about all they might have there is a ball, and maybe they would kick it together. And he's like, no. He liked music, and I said, oh, that's great, you know. And so I felt like I built rapport with him, and then later he got up and he was walking, and I thought, oh, Jan, you know, that was so stupid. You know, you asked him about soccer, and here the poor guy has cerebral palsy. But he turned and asked, he says, can I come back to church tomorrow night, or tomorrow to your VBS? And I'm like, well, how old are you? And he said, 22. And I said, we'd love to have you. I said, you can be in with our teens. So he came back every time. And Aaron was like glad, because he's not saved. This young man is not saved. And I have to tell you, they do speak English, but their dialect is such that there is no R's. Like pasta would be something that you eat, but it could also be your guy that leads the church, you know. So I had a hard time understanding him. I've just been really praying for this 22-year-old, and if you would as well. He came, and on the last day when Eric couldn't take the teens, and I did all 3 Bible sessions, he was in there, and I was doing the shepherd, and part of it was, you know, I asked him, I said, what are some things that you face on a day-to-day basis, you know? And he was the very first one. He said bullying. And they all were, you know, they would give out these answers, and as Eric said, and I told them, I said, you know what? What you're saying is it's worldwide. And I said, it's not just you here on this little island, it is worldwide. And then I related it to Jesus being the good shepherd. And but for him to come, and then he really participated, it was just so cool. So if you think of it, just please pray for him. He's heavy on my heart. And the Bible time, I'll just say about him, and then with the little ones, I had the pre-Ks, and we had a ton of them, and it was like herding cats, because they just had we were like the only one, I was like the only one in there, and Steve, praise the Lord for him, because he would help, and finally, like, you couldn't even sit. We had to wear dresses, and dresses were cooler, I will give you that, but I just felt like they were more immodest, because I'm down on the floor trying to be doing all this stuff with them, and I'm like, Lord, just help me to be modest in this dress, because, you know. So it wasn't that I had to wear a dress. I didn't begrudge that. It was just, I knew their whole purpose in it was to be modest, and I am so not, you know, when I'm trying to be with the little kids and everything. Actually, capris would have been a lot hotter, but they would have been more modest. But again, praise the Lord for other people on the team that kicked in and just went and did, you know, it was good.
Know that with this Bible school, and this like just blows me away, here we put it in the newspaper, we announce it for 2 or 3 months, we do mailings, and the only publicity for this Bible school was the door-to-door that we did the night before the Bible school happened, and 80 to 90 kids came. I mean, that was amazing. As Jan said, we did canvass the whole area. What was also cool is we canvassed the whole area is we didn't have to yell down like their driveway and ask them if we could talk to people because they said their dogs might attack us or whatever. So we had to watch the dogs and the goats and the chickens, and we had to yell from the roadway to see if it'd be all right if we could talk. But with every place that we went, we left a track, and we never had anybody that said anything negative about the tracts that we left, plus inviting the kids to Bible school. And the 3 nights that we did evening meetings, there were adults that came at the start of the church services and just stood on the front porch to see what the church meeting was all about. And there were kids that stood at the windows to see what the church service was about. And that culturally was outside of my comfort zone, seeing people on the porch walking, looking in, and seeing people stand at the window. But people at that church were okay with it because, you know, the people in that community have to see that you're real and that you really do have the love of Jesus before they want you to come in. And I thought that was pretty cool that their only publicity was our canvassing that one day. And as we canvassed, we also handed out tracts. And as Jan said, it was very remote and rural area. I mean, you saw their laundry hanging on the line. And then several evenings when we went home from the evening church meetings, we actually saw some of their kids. They didn't have indoor showers. Their showers were outside. We actually saw some of the kids, you know, right out there taking showers. And that's just their culture and their way of life. Right out on the open road was their shower. So that's publicity. Also at Bible school, I was in charge of crafts. And boy, did God take me outside of my comfort zone. From here on out, I'll always appreciate our facilities here. And we do not know how good we have it till you see people in other parts of the world. To do crafts, I had no tables or chairs. I had 4 benches that we carried out outside every day. And as Steve and Eric alluded to, we put them up under the tent, but the tent was just truthfully a great big tarp. And the kids, their work area was their lap. And they couldn't get down on the ground because it was dirt and they would get dirty. And they were literally kid, and they just worked on their little lap area. And it was just really interesting. My work area was the front porch. And I would take stuff in my suitcase and unpack everything. But I had to keep it centrally located because if I spread it too much, the kids like to come and help themselves and sort of take off with things. So I had to keep it like in my little area. Plus, we had to be able to get in the church and get back out. With the crafts that we did, every craft related back to the Bible lesson for the day, and the craft incorporated the Bible verse that they learned. And probably the coolest craft that we did is we had every child make a wordless bracelet. And with the wordless bracelet, they were given the plan of salvation, and they were given a copy of it to take with them. With the older kids, when I originally planned the crafts, we were told it was going to be like preschool to age 12. And as Jan said, we had preschool through 22. And we had a lot of older teens there. And the one craft I planned, I knew was really corny, and I knew that like the teenagers wouldn't like it. So those teenagers had a chance to make a second bracelet. But the only way they could make the second bracelet is to take what Eric taught them the one day, and the next day they had to take a sheet of paper, draw out the bridge illustration, share it with someone else in the teen group, bring it to me to show that they could actually do it. So when Eric had them do it, he did it. He had them do it. He had them share with someone else. Then the following day, they did it a 4th time with me. So they heard the plan of salvation those 2 days about 4 different times. And then they got to make the second bracelet. And of the 23 kids I had that were teens that day, every single one of them did the bridge illustration, turned it into me so they could make the second set of crafts. With the women of the church, with the crafts, I had 3 women that helped me. I also recruited Pastor Presley, and I even recruited the janitor to help me, because with that many kids and trying to do crafts, I needed anybody that could help, and I recruited whoever could help me.
Okay, we did, Marcia and I did games, and we had 3 groups because everything was set up in a rotation. And we had the older students first, and they really enjoyed every game that we did, and they liked the competition. And we did a lot of relay races, and we were on the road, because literally, and that picture, the one before where it showed the picture of the church, and it looks like this big green area behind it, it's not very big at all, like not much bigger than maybe twice the aisle at the most. And then so like if you're here's the church, and we're looking out to that green area where we were going to be, literally over here is a drop off to the ocean. Yeah. And then we had like preschoolers, and we had a young guy that was a helper. What was his name? Anyways, he helped us really well, like, because it was part of the do it, teach it, help, and then they would take care of it. then by the last day. Well, he would do fine in the first group, but then as we needed more help, I don't know where he went.
He disappeared.
He would disappear. So we had to keep going to get him, and he would do, the culture's a little different, that they don't, it's not that they won't help, but they don't take the initiative to help. Is that what you would say? So, I mean, when we'd ask him to do something, he would. So we had the older kids, they loved the relays. That's
the next picture.
The next picture. Can you go up to the next one? That's an example. So we had to move to the road because you can see that block on the side. That's where, on the other side was the back of the area from the church. So to give us more room, we did it that way. And we usually had, that was the younger group or the middle group. And I think, and then we would have, sometimes we'd have 4 lines. That was a 2-line game. We did, I'll let Marcia tell you about the games we did, but then with the little ones, the first day, I mean, we had preschoolers, and we had sweet little Rosie, which I'm sure you'll see some pictures because we all wanted to bring her home. So most of us have a Rosie picture. She was 2, and so they just dropped their kids off. It doesn't matter how old they are. I mean, she wasn't a problem whatsoever, crying, but Steve somehow ended up getting her, and, you know, then he hogged her for a while, but she was a delight. But so with preschoolers, we had our helper had gone somewhere else, so it's just us. I mean, and she's a preschool teacher, and I teach K1 too, but we were like, what are we going to do? So we ended up putting them in a circle, and then we did our games differently with them. And then I'll let Marcia tell you about the different games because we had to adapt being over there.
Well, the first game, because the first night was the light. So we did a relay game where they had to run down the road and they had to pick out an activity from a bag that we had sitting there. They had to do whatever it was. It could have been like jumping jacks. It could have been touching your nose, whatever it was. And then they had to run back and tag the next person, and that's how they did it. And the game was pretty much saying that I am the light, follow me, was what it was. The second night was Shepherd, and we took balloons, but Diane and I didn't realize it was going to be windy. So we, which the kids helped us with this, we stuck a rock in each one of the balloons to help hold it down, which was Diane's brilliant idea.
So that's what you'll see that.
So, and then we took fly swatters, and they had to herd the balloons with their fly swatters. And with the preschoolers, we just had them take the balloon around the circle because there was no way you could give preschoolers fly swatters. It was just, seriously, we joke and say that I think we started out with, what, about 30 preschoolers, but there were 500 of them. I mean, because by the time you chase one around, you're like, okay, was that one with us before? So, and then the third night was and we did, with the older kids, we did like an over-under game where they had to pass the ball over and then under their head. They loved that. But also on the beach ball, we wrote the verse with blanks, and then they would throw it, and wherever they caught it, they had to fill in the blank. Like it might say, I am the blank, and they had to say, I am the door. So we also taught them the memory verse at the same time.
It was really neat to see how it connected with the music, with the teaching, and with the game time. And then sometime before the presentation's over, there's a video of one of the groups saying their memory verse. So. Okay, we did have some time for fun. On the first Saturday we were there, they took us around to various places. And the first place we went, this is kind of out of order. Okay, wait, back. Okay, we went to Black Point. This was not the first day, but this was Black Point Tunnel, and slavery was abolished in around 1830 in St. Vincent, but they already had slaves coming like over the across the ocean. So the businessmen, these people were indentured servants. So the businessmen had them build this cave, and it was really amazing. I just can't even understand how they did it. And then they had places they would bring the sugar cane through this area, and there were bats in that tunnel, but we went through anyways. And the next picture is at that beach. We went to 2 beaches. The one beach was rocky, where it was behind Aaron's house in St. Vincent, and this was a little bit different. It was a little different place. They do have some parks. I'll let Steve talk about the next part.
Yeah. So we were basically living on the slopes of a volcano. And they call it an active volcano because it still has the potential to erupt anytime.
1979.
Yeah, it was the last time it erupted. So, but anyway, it's called La Souffleur, and our driver, I don't know, we were kind of joking around with him one afternoon. It was just really just exceptionally hot coming out of Bible school, and it was like everybody was telling Grafton how much they loved him. And I said, Grafton, I love you, but I love your air conditioning in your van much better. Could we just drive around for a while? So he took us up the road to the volcano, which was really cool. We couldn't go all the way to the top, but he took us to the trailhead, and it would have been another like a 3-hour hike. We just didn't have time or the energy to do it. But
we never did see the volcano itself because the clouds were too low.
It was
so maybe some
low clouds all the time, so you couldn't see the summit. But on the way back down, we met Grafton pulled up alongside the road. There was like this little shack along the road, and this guy steps out with bananas, with a bunch of bananas, and Grafton bought us all bananas to eat in the van, and which was a lot of fun. Fresh bananas off the tree. And it turns out that this guy, he was home because he typically works for the cruise line, for one of the cruise lines, and so he was basically gone for 6 months, and then he'd be home for 6 months. And so when he was home, he would sell bananas along the road.
And one thing that really struck us was the different, the fruits and vegetables that they had access to. I mean, it was just there. And you'd go to your neighbor and say, can I have a pizza? Can I have a breadfruit? Or can I have some papaya? And they would just, cut it off the tree. And in the beginning of the trip, I didn't feel very well physically, and we were just all exhausted and hot. And I think about day 3. I don't know if everybody else felt like this, but I'm like, I don't think I can do this. I'm just like, I can't do this. But by the end, I know we were praying for us, but by the end of the trip, I felt a lot better physically. And I'd always wondered if it was because we were eating such the fresh fruit, and maybe I was detoxing before, but it was a great opportunity.
Speaking of fresh fruit, one day, on a free day on Saturday, Aaron took us to the botanical gardens in Kingston, which is the capital city, Kingstown, which is the capital city. And the botanical gardens are the oldest botanical gardens in the Western Hemisphere. So they've been around a long time. Very well kept, and they have all of the native trees plus plants from all over the world that will grow in a tropical environment. And so we get to taste a lot of different fruits. You go to a garden, like a botanical garden here or someplace, and it's like, don't touch the plants or anything. Well, our guide was just picking stuff up off the ground and sometimes picking things off the trees and just handing them to us. Here, try this.
And that's the picture of the guy with the white T-shirt. He has grabbed a rock, and those were almonds. And he takes it and you just hit it on the seed, and they open it up, and that's where an almond is. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's why they're so expensive. Yeah. But he did it for each one of us, so that was fun to get to taste that.
The fruit that fascinated me, and I don't know what it's called. I'll call it a bowling ball tree. The one on the right there, and because it's this huge fruit, and you'll notice the tree branch is not that thick, but it's like a pumpkin growing on a tree.
This next one is a plum fruit, a rose plum, which is very similar to our plums, but just very sweet and very good.
Very good. Okay.
I did want to say, too, one thing, it's just the people there, because I think this is my last time to be up, the people there are wonderful, and I know Aaron said, like in the first day or two that we were there and just getting adjusted, he goes, and when you come back, I'm like, bad chance of that, I'm not going back. But the Lord changed my heart and gave me a love for the people there. And I think if I would go back, I know how to prepare. And if anybody wanted to go, I'd give you ideas of how to prepare for it. But just the people that, can you go back a slide, maybe one more? See the lady right there in between Marcia and I. Her name is Diana, and she's the deacon pastor's wife, Brother Bradley's wife. And I just really, she was very special to me. She has 4 children. One daughter's older and working on her own, but just the sacrifices they do just to come to church. Her husband usually doesn't get off till 8:30 at night. He has a couple-hour drive, yet, they were in church every service that we had, every VBS planning we had. And before we left, she said, I didn't get my hug. And so I think I ask you to pray for her and her family, that the Lord would be near to them. They don't have the things that we have to make our lives easier as far as modern conveniences. And they just probably don't know any different, but I know that they're hot like we are, and it's a lot to do, but she had a smile on her face the whole time. And it was a very sad goodbye. When we said goodbye, we prayed at the airport with Grafton and Aaron, and this is our third mission trip, and I've always been sad, but it's kind of like see in heaven, and it was a different sadness this time because we just really felt like they needed support. So just pray that you would pray for them.
This is Denise. Aaron's the missionary. It was his mother. And the week that we were there, she ended up having several doctor appointments, and she was admitted to the hospital. And we've just found out that she's been diagnosed with colon cancer. And if you would just remember Denise in your prayers, we became very close to her just with meeting her at the airport, and then she spent the morning with us and she cooked, well, even the day she was admitted to the hospital, it was a Sunday, and they had invited us over for lunch, and she got up extra early, cooked the cod, cooked the vegetables to go with it, and had everything ready before she found a ride to the hospital. And, just what a servant's heart. And, here in the States, we have insurance, and we appreciate having insurance. Their insurance is like it is here. It's extremely costly, and they don't have insurance. And so one of the things that Aaron did while we were there is he took a day just to go around to different family members and to try and arrange the finances, because they won't do the chemotherapy till they have the money lined up and that they can guarantee that things will be paid for. So if you would just remember Aaron and his mom Denise in your prayers, we would appreciate it. And did you have any other slides of people that we met? Those were some of the pastor's daughters. Keep in mind, we did Bible school in the morning, we did church services in the evening, and some of these people had like a 45-minute plus van ride or bus ride. So, the kids by the end of the evening ended up sleeping on different adults' shoulders and stuff. And I mean, they were exhausted because they had been at church in the morning, they'd been at church in the evening, had long rides, and just made for long days. And there were a lot of kids that were pretty sleepy during the Sunday evening services. Back up one. The three ladies that you see there are three that were godsends to me, because those were the three ladies that helped me with crafts. It was Pastor Bradley's wife, and then the other two ladies, the one in red is a hearing interpreter in the schools, and the one in the middle is a preschool teacher, and they were just like my extra set of hands with crafts. Is that? Oh, my heavens. We have Landis here and Dan Davis. Well, they have Harry there. And their janitor, Harry, was at every VBS. And what a man with a servant's heart. He helped with the crafts. And then not only did he have a regular broom, but he had a broom that he made out of sticks and straw. And the one day I had this bright idea of doing these wonderful crafts with tissue paper, but they did not tell me that we were right on the edge of a beach and it would be windy. And he literally swept up and cleaned up hundreds of pieces of floating tissue paper that just like went everywhere and never complained. And, he was there when we opened up. He stayed after we left, and then you'd come back in the evening for the evening services, and there Harry would be helping set up, and he would be there as we were leaving in the evening. And what a servant's heart, and like Harry was just like a fabulous janitor, plus just a helper to all of us. Just kids at Bible school. There's Rosie. Steve carried her a lot that first day. And that was Brother Bradley back there.
Oops. I skipped past. Somebody's Rosie picture. Oh, Marcia's Rosie picture.
We all have a Rosie picture.
It's different kids.
Those are pictures I took of kids at VBS. Breadfruit. Oh, we met a lot of interesting people along the way, and we called this guy like the beach teacher. And outside Aaron's house was this beach, and it was a retired teacher administrator, and he just struck up a conversation with us, and I bet we talked to him for half an hour, 45 minutes. And not only did he just talk about the area, but he talked about electricity and hydrology and hydroelectric power. Just, I mean, everybody there was just so friendly, and just, they wouldn't just talk a little bit, they'd just like talk your leg off. Jan's Rosie picture. Those were all the preschoolers. Well, not all of them, some of the preschoolers. And then I'll turn it over.
I know we're running a little long, so I'll try and wrap up real quick. But yes, it was just wonderful people there, and maybe we'll have a chance to go back in the future, and it'd be neat to take a group with us. And just people that know their history of their island, people strike up these conversations like Debbie was saying, and all of them are rattling off dates and years of things that happened on their island, and just so kind of proud of their culture there. And finally, after like the 12th person was telling us about when they got their independence and all their, I'm like, I can't, everyone here like really know, you're just really proud of your island, you really know your history. He says, well, we teach it in schools. I'm like, yeah, well, we teach our history in schools too, but I know people in Byesville coming up to me and telling me about, you know, our independence and all that. So just really sweet people there. And so at the end of the day, kind of did we accomplish our goal? Yes and no. I think yes, I think we really put on a successful VBS, like Debbie said. There was like between 70 and 80 kids of the week, and we just really got to share the gospel multiple times and to pray with some people, and just really made some good friendships. And while I was sitting at the airport, Aaron, the missionary you saw in the pictures, had told me about this app that all of them use on the island, where you can send messages and stuff to people without having phone service, and just if you have internet. And so I'm sitting in the airport, and and I'm just waiting to get on the plane. I'm tired, and it popped up and said, you have a message. And I look at it, and it was from Aaron, and he'd recorded a little audio clip, and he just said how much he appreciated our team, and he said, I just think of you guys as friends forever, and just thank you so much for helping this week, and I look forward to knowing you guys for years to come, and if we don't see you next year, we'll see you in heaven, and just really sweet. And so I really think we kind of accomplished our mission in some sense to help them put on a VBS. I think we really gave them a sense that they could do it themselves, that they could do it without having a bunch of American money. They could do it themselves if they needed to. Our coaching didn't quite work like we thought, but one of the neat things is that they do have laptops and internet there, and so Jan had talked to them about, well, like maybe when things come up, we could Skype and talk over the internet and maybe help and coach you through things in the future. And so, what are some of the things going forward we're going to do from here? We had told them that we would take our offering from our VBS, which was, what was it, $700?
It was $760.
Okay, 700 and some, which in their money, you know, it's like $2,100 in their money. I think they're going to be able to do amazing things with our VBS offering that we're going to send them. Steve is getting together a guitar to ship down for Aaron. I've got a whole bunch of digital materials. I've spent my whole life ripping off other preachers that are much better than me. So I got just mountains of stuff I can email down in PDF files and stuff. And so I started talking, at one point we're talking I took down some books. And they were just so humble. And one of the books is How to Study the Bible. And I didn't want the pastor to think I was like digging on him like you don't know how to study the Bible. So I was like, well, hey, you know, this is a great book because you was talking about you needed to kind of train up some more young men. And this is a great book to do with another young guy and help him on how to study the Bible. He said, me? He said, man, I need it. And just real humble and you know, just kind of really anxious to learn. And so the books we took were really appreciated. And so I'd love to just send them kind of more things in the future because they don't have access to a lot of that. And I started mentioning, well, like, you know, you can go to, gty.org, and they've got all these sermons you can listen to for free. And he started writing it down, and then Aaron heard us talking. He come over, and he's grabbing a piece of paper, and he's writing it down. And Pastor Presley from kind of the mother church that's planted this one, he's like, what did you say? And so all of them were writing down website names and stuff where they could download things. So that was really cool. And so, you know, in the future, we still want to kind of maintain contact with them and maybe coach over the internet and help. And we just love Denise there. We'd like to maybe help with her cancer treatment if we could. And I guess the big thing is just pray. There's a lot of Vincentians that heard the gospel at this VBS, and so just like our own VBS, we're praying that the seed of God's word takes root and produces things even long after we're gone. And so pray for them, pray for their leadership team there because they're kind of in transition